Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take that fire hose of information you've gathered and really refine it into actionable, crystal clear knowledge, tailor-made just for you.
Today, we are wading into a subject that is, it's absolutely universal, but it's so often misunderstood. We're talking about managing stress and anxiety.
Right, we all feel it, but understanding the actual mechanics of it, that's a different story.
Exactly. And the material we have for this deep dive is, well, it's exceptional because it doesn't just offer quick fixes. It offers a whole structured system for recognizing and resetting your biological alarms.
Okay, let's unpack that immediately, because that core idea from the sources is the ultimate mindset shift, and it's one we all desperately need.
Hmm.
Instead of seeing anxiety as, a personal failing or a lack of grit, the source material reframes both anxiety and stress as these sophisticated, if sometimes faulty, alarms.
Right. They're not the villain.
Never the villain.
Yeah.
They're just a system trying desperately to keep you safe.
And that reframe is the anchor for this whole conversation. It changes everything. Managing them, then, isn't about eradicating the feelings, which, let's be honest, is an impossible goal.
Totally impossible.
It's about becoming a really skilled system administrator. The source says we have to learn which alarms to honor, which to tune, and which to shut off. It immediately shifts the paradigm from fighting yourself to performing intelligent maintenance.
And that leads right into what the source material's author calls a Thaddism, this perfect little nugget of insight.
Oh, I love this part.
It speaks directly to that feeling of being jumpy and overwhelmed.
It really does. The foundational concept here is so simple, but it's profound. Your nervous system isn't broken. It's not your enemy.
Right.
It is, and this is the quote, a bodyguard who needs better intel.
A bodyguard who needs better intel. Just sit with that for a second.
Exactly. Think about it. If your personal security detail, your
Yeah.
own biology, is jumpy,
Right.
paranoid, setting off the car alarm every time a leaf falls, the problem isn't that the bodyguard is bad.
No.
It's that they're operating on flawed or incomplete information, maybe based on threats that aren't even there anymore.
It's acting exactly as it was programmed to act, based on all the input it's ever received.
Precisely. So our mission here is to provide that crucial intelligence to your system, to stop you, the listener, from blaming yourself for what is just, pure hardwired biology.
We're giving the bodyguard a better radio, a secure channel.
A secure comms channel.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. So to give you the structure you crave, we've mapped this deep dive into 5 clear sections. We're going to move from immediate intervention to long-term strategy.
Okay.
First, we'll nail down the basic biology of this alarm system and 5 immediate crisis tools. Then we'll move into the 6 categories of daily maintenance, the long game. Third, we'll cover external supports, therapy, medication, community, and really normalize using those resources. Fourth, we dive into the absolutely essential role of boundaries. And finally, we'll wrap up with a simple, phased, actionable daily plan.
It's a comprehensive framework. It's designed not just to understand the problem, but to give you a structured path, a way to live comfortably with a sensitive nervous system in, a pretty chaotic world.
All right, let's start at the beginning then, understanding the wiring.
Let's do it.
So let's jump straight into that wiring. Before we can use any tools, we have to understand what we're actually working with. The source makes a really crucial, clear distinction between anxiety and stress. What is the fundamental difference physiologically when that alarm goes off?
What's fascinating is how clearly the sources separate the acute from the chronic. So anxiety is defined as the immediate acute threat response. It's the instant switch flip.
Okay.
This happens in the amygdala, deep in the ancient part of your brain. It pulls the fire alarm before the rational part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, even has a chance to really process what's happening.
So it's instantaneous,
Yeah.
non-negotiable, pure reflex.
Exactly. And this instant alarm, it just floods your entire system with a huge amount of energy, specifically adrenaline and cortisol.
The stress hormones.
Right. This is the physiological prep for that classic survival triad: fight, flee, or freeze. Adrenaline gives you that immediate burst of speed or strength, and cortisol makes sure you have the resources for a longer threat.
Which is great if a bear is chasing you.
Magnificent. But it's incredibly exhausting when the trigger is, a sudden work email or an ambiguous text message.
So anxiety is the immediate chemical reaction. What then is stress, if they're different?
Stress, on the other hand, is the total load on the system. It's the cumulative weight of everything you're juggling.
The background noise.
The background hum, exactly. We're talking work deadlines, chronic illness, relationship drama, financial pressures, and This is a big, one-old, unprocessed emotional memories that the system is still trying to sort out.
Okay, I see the connection now. So if that background load, the stress stays high for weeks or months, the immediate alarm system, the anxiety response, it gets hypersensitive.
Precisely. If the circuit is constantly overloaded, the alarms just start to misfire. The system gets what the source calls jumpy. It starts interpreting neutral things as immediate threats because your internal resources are already depleted. You're in a state of chronic hypervigilance.
And the key takeaway here, the part I really think should stick with you, is the removal of self-judgment. The source is very direct. If your system is jumpy, if the alarm is ringing too loudly, that's not weakness, that's wiring.
Yes.
It's not a moral failure. It's a simple biological response to an overloaded circuit.
That is the crucial intelligence we need to deliver to the bodyguard. We're acknowledging the system is sensitive because it's been under strain, and now, armed with that understanding, we can look at the 5 immediate tools for right now relief.
The circuit breakers.
The circuit breakers, those crucial interventions for when the alarm is wailing and you need to bring the system down fast.
These are the quick deployment interventions you can use anywhere. The first one is phenomenal because it hits cognitive, physical, and physiological regulation all at once. Name it, place it, pace it. Explain the mechanism behind that trifecta.
It's structured to interrupt the emotional hijack sequence.
Right.
When the amygdala fires, the feeling is overwhelming, and our first instinct is usually to fight it or, run away from it internally.
Right.
When you name it, when you say, I'm noticing anxiety or I'm feeling dread, you're performing a mental maneuver called labeling. And this act requires the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought.
So you're shifting from feeling the anxiety to observing the anxiety.
Exactly. That simple cognitive shift immediately calms the limbic system because you're no longer fully merged with the emotion. You've gained some observational distance.
Okay, then place it.
Then you move to place it. This is grounding the experience physically. You identify exactly where you feel the sensation. Is it chest tightness, a lump in your throat, a churning stomach? Then you put a hand there. This acknowledges the physical reality instead of just fighting the mental story.
And the most critical step, the one that truly tells the brain the fire is actually out, is pace it. This needs to be explained in detail because it's a direct biological override.
The pace is everything because it directly talks to the vagus nerve. The instructions are specific. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, and then, this is the critical part, exhale for 6 to 8 counts. And you need to do this for at least 6 full rounds.
Why the long exhale? What's the magic there?
Well, the vagus nerve is the main communication highway between your gut, your heart, and your brain. It plays a central role in regulating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest mode.
The brakes on the system.
The brakes. So when you lengthen the exhale, you manually engage your diaphragm, which stimulates the vagus nerve. That releases neurotransmitters like acetylcholine, which slows the heart rate and sends the fastest, most direct physiological signal to your nervous system. You are safe now.
Wow. It's the ultimate signal that the immediate threat is gone.
It is. It's a direct command.
So it's not just take a deep breath. It's a targeted, specific physiological command.
It's the technical specification for calming the system. But what if you're so overwhelmed you can't remember the 448 count? What does the source say is the absolute lowest barrier to entry?
The core mechanism is always the exhale. So if you can only do one thing, the sword says just maximize the breath out. Just focus on a long, slow whoosh of air until your lungs feel empty. You don't even need to worry about the inhale count at first.
A minimal, viable breathing intervention. I like that.
Just that deliberate, prolonged exhale serves as the immediate signal for safety.
Excellent. Okay, so if that first tool interrupts the physical and emotional response, the second immediate tool, the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique, is designed to pull you fully out of the mental cyclone.
Let's explain the mechanism there. A racing mind is almost always trapped either in future catastrophe or past regret.
Exactly. Ruminative anxiety is a temporal disconnect. It's not in the present. So grounding forces you into the present physical reality by systematically engaging your senses. It short-circuits that internal thought loop.
How does it work?
You identify 5 things you can see, details, colors, textures, 4 things you can feel, the chair under you, the texture of your clothes, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you smell, and finally, 1 thing you can taste.
This sounds almost too simple, but the cognitive principle is so powerful you're redirecting finite cognitive resources.
You are. The anxious brain is consuming processing power just catastrophizing. By forcing it to focus on concrete, objective sensory details, the blue of that wall, the feeling of the carpet, you divert that processing power. It's impossible to simultaneously run a full panic narrative and systematically list 5 objective visual inputs.
You're replacing the catastrophic thinking with reality-based observation.
You are.
I appreciate how the sources balance that internal focus with external sensory input. Which brings us to tool number 3, which is all about the physical acute reset, specifically temperature and posture.
This is a powerful, almost primal reset. We're leveraging what's called the mammalian dive reflex. The sources suggest splashing cool water on your face, specifically the area below your eyes and above your lip, or holding an ice cube, or just stepping outside into a sudden temperature change.
We mentioned the dive reflex. Can you explain precisely why cold water is such an acute physiological interrupt?
Yeah, so when cold water hits the face, especially that triangular region, it immediately triggers that vagal response, the parasympathetic brakes. Because historically, this reflex prepared mammals to survive being submerged in water.
Okay.
It instantly slows your heart rate, constricts peripheral blood vessels, and shifts your focus. For a nervous system that's running hot, it provides this acute, non-cognitive shock that resets the baseline level of activation. Instantly. It's a physiological reboot button.
That is extremely actionable. Now let's combine that with the posture reset, which is a brilliant piece of nonverbal communication to your own brain.
It's the ultimate bodily narrative. When we're highly stressed or anxious, we tend to adopt a closed posture, right?
Yeah.
Shoulders hiked, jaw clenched, curled inward to protect our vital organs.
Right. We make ourselves smaller.
We do. So the source advises forcing an open posture. Rolling your shoulders down and back, uncrossing your legs, and planting your feet firmly on the ground. By opening your posture, your body is literally telling your brain against the internal alarm that you're safe, that you're confident and prepared, not fearful or retreating.
You're flooding the system with physical evidence of non-threat.
Exactly.
Tool number 4 addresses the sheer mental hyperactivity when the brain is stuck in that self-perpetuating loop. If the mind is racing, you need to give it a track.
The anxious brain is a problem-solving machine that's just running on overdrive, but it lacks a productive structure. So if you give it a challenging, structured, but benign task, it can redirect that intense wasted energy.
What are some examples?
The sources provide 2 great ones that demand high focus: counting backward by 7s from 100, or reciting the alphabet with a specific, rigid category like naming a city for every letter.
This is more complex than just a simple distraction. It's leveraging the brain's need for intellectual engagement.
It forces a cognitive detour. The energy required to do a calculation like 100, 93, 86, it's intense enough to consume the working memory that would otherwise be fueling that catastrophic thought loop. It's a temporary cognitive bypass. You're putting the busy brain into a structured lane until the adrenaline starts to subside.
And finally, because so much of our stress is social and reactive, especially now, we need the triage script for immediate social stress. This is where you grant yourself permission granted to exit.
This is absolutely critical for protecting your boundaries and preventing a situation from spiking your nervous system. The speed of digital communication often forces these immediate high-emotion responses.
Dictated by the amygdala.
Exactly. So the script is simple, non-confrontational, and effective. I need 10. Just step away from the conversation or the phone.
And what happens in those 10 minutes?
You deploy the earlier tools, especially the paced breathing. You wait for the prefrontal cortex to come back online. Only then do you decide, do I respond now? Do I respond later when I've fully calmed down? Or, recognizing that some battles aren't worth fighting, do I not respond at all?
That delay gives you back your agency.
It does. It prevents the immediate adrenaline rush from dictating actions you'll regret later. It buys you time to engage the rational brain.
Immediate relief achieved. We have 5 fantastic tools to put out the fire. But as we transition, we have to acknowledge that if you're constantly using these immediate tools, the baseline load is still too high. We need to move from the fire drill to ongoing preventative maintenance.
That is the perfect transition. The shift we need to make here is fundamental, moving away from seeking some miraculous quick fix and toward embracing the tedious necessity of daily strategic practice. As the source emphasizes, maintenance beats miracles every single time.
This is about systematically lowering that chronic stress load so the bodyguard isn't exhausted before the next threat even appears.
Precisely. The goal of these daily practices is not to eliminate anxiety entirely, which is impossible, but to reduce the baseline level of physiological activation, so that when those inevitable threats appear, the alarm rings at a manageable level, not a catastrophic one.
It's much easier to manage a fire alarm if the house isn't already full of smoke.
Exactly.
Let's start with practice A, one of the most fundamental building blocks of resilience. Sleep. It's medicine. What are the key non-negotiables the sources lay out beyond just, getting 7 to 9 hours?
The quantitative guidelines are pretty standard, but the most critical behavioral component for nervous system regulation is maintaining the same wake time daily, even on weekends.
That's the one everyone struggles with.
It is. It might seem counterintuitive, but rigid wake timing regulates your circadian rhythm, which in turn dictates the precise timing and release of mood-stabilizing hormones like cortisol and melatonin. Consistency is the key to telling your brain the world is predictable and safe.
And the sleeping environment itself is also a message to the bodyguard.
Absolutely. The environment must be optimized. The recommendation is to keep the cage dark, cool, and quiet. Darkness is essential for melatonin production. The optimal temperature is often cited as 60 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit. A slightly cooler room helps your core body temperature drop, which is necessary to initiate deep, restorative sleep.
But the reality is that anxiety often spikes at night. People find themselves staring at the ceiling, ruminating. This is where the source offers a very specific, low-friction coping mechanism, the worry pad technique.
This is a genius technique for nocturnal rumination because it satisfies the anxious brain's fear of forgetting some vital piece of information. The idea is simple. Keep a small, physical worry pad and a pen next to the bed. If you start ruminating, you write down the specific worry. You get it out of your cognitive working memory and onto the page. And externalize it.
And the power lies in the psychological contract you make.
Yes. Once it's written down, you close the pad and you make a clear, simple commitment. I promise to deal with this tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. This commitment allows the brain to release the immediate cognitive load. It trusts the thought won't be lost, and it frees up the bandwidth for sleep.
And the source stresses that the pad should be analog, not digital, right? Why is that so important?
Because the goal is winding down, not activating. The second you engage with a digital device, you're introducing blue light, which suppresses melatonin, and you're opening the door to distraction-checking emails, scrolling news. An analog pad is a tactile, contained interaction. It keeps the activity brief and aligned with the goal of quiet resolution.
Okay, moving on to practice B, movement. The sources are extremely clear that movement is for chemistry, not aesthetics. We need to focus on what it does physiologically.
This is a huge reframing for so many people. We're not talking about fitness. We're talking about completing a biological cycle.
The core insight being, movement completes stress cycles that the mind cannot simply think its way out of.
That's it. Remember that adrenaline and cortisol are pure physical energy designed for mobilization, for running or fighting. When we experience stress in the modern world, we often freeze or sit still at our desks, meaning that powerful chemical residue gets trapped in our muscles and nervous system.
And that unused energy is what leaves us feeling wired, tense, or experiencing that chronic fight-of-flight feeling hours later.
Exactly. Movement, whether it's a brisk 30-minute walk, lifting weights, a yoga session, it physically uses that stored chemical fuel. It helps metabolize the cortisol and burn off the adrenaline, allowing the nervous system to physically conclude the perceived threat. The body stores fear in the muscles. Movement is how you tell the body that energy was successfully deployed.
Practice C, feed the system, don't spike it. This is all about maintaining chemical stability in that gut-brain axis.
Precisely. We're aiming for level ground, avoiding the metabolic roller coaster that high sugar and certain stimulants create. The priorities are stability, protein plus fiber at breakfast, consistently, and adequate hydration. This simple combination keeps blood sugar levels stable, preventing the dips that can trigger or even mimic panic symptoms, the lightheadedness, the jitters.
And then we get to the critical time limits for stimulants, which are notorious for fueling a jumpy nervous system.
The sources establish an absolute boundary here. The caffeine window is rigid. None after 2:00 p.m., and maybe even earlier if you know you're sensitive. Caffeine has a half-life of about 5 to 6 hours.
So half of it is still in your system hours later.
Exactly. If you drink a coffee at 4 p.m., half of that caffeine is still actively circulating in your system when you try to go to sleep at 10 p.m. It drastically interferes with your ability to get restorative deep sleep, even if you manage to fall asleep initially.
And then there's the alcohol paradox, which is so often used as a self-medication strategy for anxiety.
Alcohol is the classic false promise. It feels like an instant off switch because it enhances the neurotransmitter GABA, which is a calming signal. It successfully turns off the alarm.
For a while.
The source warns that as the body metabolizes that depressant, it initiates a rebound effect, It compensates with excitatory neurotransmitters, primarily glutamate. This is why people experience that high-intensity anxiety. The system rebounds like an on switch at 3 a.m., disrupting sleep and spiking anxiety when you're most vulnerable. It's a very costly trade-off.
Practice D is digital hygiene and curated inputs. This directly acknowledges that our high-input environment is a constant source of low-level stress.
The nervous system, that bodyguard, is always listening to inputs, and the constant digital barrage maintains a state of chronic hypervigilance. The practice is defined by control. You restrict news and social media to fixed, set windows. You prevent the constant drip feed that forces your brain into a perpetual state of scanning for urgency.
Because the brain is not designed for continuous partial attention.
No, it creates cognitive fragmentation. And the specific advice on push notifications is a gold standard for protecting your mental bandwidth. You have to turn off any push notifications that aren't paying your mortgage.
That's a great litmus test. Most notifications are just interruptions designed to steal your attention, constantly pulling you out of the present and telling your brain that something urgent requires your immediate action.
We crave that little dopamine hit, but the cumulative cost is profound. It leads to mental exhaustion and jumpiness. Curating your inputs is essentially protecting your cognitive bandwidth.
Practice E is sober journaling, a simple, low-barrier entry method into emotional processing.
The key is that it's structured and low pressure. This isn't writing a novel. It's 10 minutes max, done when your mind is clear. And the method is incredibly specific. It prevents you from getting lost in some overwhelming narrative. You only write 3 lines.
Okay, what are they?
1, what happened, the objective facts. 2, what I felt, the emotion attached. And 3, what I need, the next actionable step.
That structure is vital. It forces you away from that endless why rumination and toward concrete emotional identification and action.
And the bonus control line seals the deal. You add one thing I can control today. That micro-intervention, focusing on an achievable task, shifts your focus from overwhelm to internal agency. It actively restores a sense of personal control, which is the exact antidote to generalized anxiety.
Finally, practice F, connecting with connection and place. The sources remind us that we are social animals and ecological beings, and the modern world kind of works against both of those needs.
The human need for genuine connection is non-negotiable for nervous system regulation. The target is modest and achievable, one real conversation a day. This means vulnerability, presence, and non-distracted attention. This is about co-regulation.
What do you mean by that?
When we are truly present with another safe person, our nervous systems subtly synchronize, and we can actually borrow the calmness of the other person. It's a powerful, non-pharmacological regulator.
And the connection to the physical environment, the place component, is equally powerful. The source notes that humans weren't built for blinking rectangles and fluorescent hum.
Our nervous systems evolved outdoors, attuned to natural rhythms, the sound of wind, the shifting light, the smell of the earth. The simple remedy is to just touch grass, touch trees, or water. This physical connection, even for a moment, recalibrates the sensory system. It provides immediate, undeniable evidence of a non-threatening environment, which is profoundly calming for an overactive bodyguard.
We've covered immediate crisis management and daily maintenance. But sometimes, especially when the total stress load is historical, systemic, or just overwhelming, even the best maintenance plan isn't enough. This next section is crucial for normalizing the strategic use of external support.
Using external support is a strategic decision. It's a sign of intelligence, not failure. We should frame it like hiring a specialist engineer to fix some systemic wiring issues. We're covering the 4 pillars here: therapy, medication, supplements, and community.
These resources create the sustained window of calm necessary for the daily tools to actually work.
Exactly.
Let's look at therapy first. The sources break down this skill-building menu of specific therapeutic modalities, reminding us that therapy is targeted treatment, not just a vague chat.
It's vital to know the menu. First, we have CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. This is fundamentally skill-building. It's focused on changing destructive thought patterns and maladaptive behaviors. It deals with the present and teaches you concrete tools, like cognitive reframing.
Challenging those catastrophic thoughts with evidence.
Right, and behavioral experiments, where you actually test your feared outcomes to disprove them.
Then there's ACT, which sounds like it takes a different philosophical approach.
ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, shifts the focus from changing your thoughts to changing your relationship with those thoughts. It's about building psychological flexibility, learning to carry discomfort, the anxiety itself, while still moving toward your core values.
So you stop fighting the internal feeling so intensely.
You do, which allows you to allocate that wasted energy toward living a meaningful life instead.
And for those whose high anxiety is clearly linked to a high historical load, what is often broadly termed trauma, there are specialized approaches.
Yes, the sources mention EMDR and somatic therapies. These approaches recognize that trauma and chronic stress are often stored as physical memories or stuck alarms in the body, not just cognitive memories.
So they work with the body directly.
They do. EMDR uses bilateral stimulation like side-to-side eye movements to help the brain reprocess and finish old alarms that were never properly metabolized. Somatic therapy focuses on releasing body-held tension and tracking physical sensations to discharge that stored fight-or-flight energy safely.
That distinction addressing the physical residue versus the cognitive narrative is key. And the sources offer practical advice on affordability, right?
Absolutely. Access is the biggest barrier. Look into community clinics, university training programs, group therapy, which is highly effective for anxiety and sliding scale platforms. Seeking support shouldn't break the bank. There are options.
Moving to medication, which the sources position as a strategic tool to create a necessary window of calm for skill acquisition.
This is the rule established in the source material. Meds create a window of calm. Skills and boundaries keep it open. Medication doesn't fix the underlying issues, but it can reduce the volume of the alarm, allowing the brain to stabilize enough to actually learn and practice the daily tools we talked about.
It moves you out of crisis mode and into learning mode.
That's it.
Let's dedicate time to the categories and mechanisms which often confuse people. Why do SSRIs take so long to work?
This is critical for managing expectations. The mainstays for persistent anxiety are SSRIs and SNRIs. They work by increasing the availability of serotonin or norepinephrine in the brain, essentially making more of that calming signal available. But the delay taking 4 to 6 weeks to feel effective is profound.
Why the wait?
They aren't a faucet you just turn on, they're more like fertilizer. When you first introduce them, the brain's receptors get a bit confused and often temporarily downregulate, which can sometimes make symptoms feel worse at first.
Oh, that's important to know.
It is. The body needs weeks to adjust, to increase receptor sensitivity, and undergo neuroplastic changes, actually building new, calmer pathways. You are literally stabilizing the chemical environment, which is a slow, methodical process.
Then we have more targeted options.
Yes. Buscarone is mentioned as a non-sedating option specifically for generalized anxiety that works differently than SSRIs. And then there are beta blockers.
Which are purely physical.
Purely physical. They are adrenaline antagonists. They literally block the receptor sites for adrenaline in your body, preventing the physical manifestation of anxiety, the heart racing, the shaking hands. They're excellent for situational or performance anxieties, like public speaking, because they don't affect the cognitive worry, but they stop the physical runaway train.
And finally, the category that requires the most careful use, benzodiazepines.
These are acknowledged as powerful, highly effective rescue tools for an acute crisis. They work by enhancing GABA, the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. However, the source delivers a strong warning. They carry a high risk of dependence and tolerance.
So they're not a long-term solution.
Absolutely not. The advice is to use them carefully and sparingly, only as a short-term crisis tool, ideally with a clear plan to taper off, and never as a daily maintenance strategy.
We shift now to supplements, which are presented clearly as supports, not saviors. What 3 specific supplements do the sources mention that might assist the system?
And we must always advise consulting a clinician first, because supplements can interact with medications. But the 3 specified supports are, first, magnesium glycinate. Magnesium plays a critical role in muscle relaxation and neurotransmitter function. The glycinate form is often recommended because it crosses the blood-brain barrier effectively, making it ideal for evening use.
The second is often discussed as a smooth-edge supplement.
That would be L-theanine, an amino acid found in green tea. L-theanine promotes alpha brainwave activity, which is associated with a state of relaxed focus. It calms the jitteriness of anxiety without causing heavy sedation. And third, omega-3s for their general anti-inflammatory benefits to brain health and mood stability. Again, they are supports, not miracle cures.
The last pillar of external support is community. Why is simply showing up and breathing, among others, so critical to managing a jumpy nervous system?
Anxiety and shame thrive on isolation. When we're isolated, the nervous system assumes it has to handle the threat all alone, which just fuels the bodyguard's paranoia. Community peer groups, faith groups, recovery rooms offers co-regulation. The requirement is low. You don't have to give a personal TED Talk.
Right.
You just need to show up and breathe among the breathing. The shared regulated presence of safe people is a powerful, nonverbal signal of safety to the nervous system. It reminds it that survival is a communal activity.
This brings us to part 4, which is arguably the most strategic and protective aspect of managing a jumpy nervous system: boundaries. If we think of stress as the chronic load, boundaries are the fence we put up to keep the external threat load manageable.
This is where we connect the internal regulation to the external world. The sources state this concept so clearly and powerfully. Anxiety lives on ambiguity. Boundaries are clarity. When you lack clear boundaries, your nervous system is constantly running these complex background scans, trying to predict the outcome of every interaction, which is profoundly exhausting.
Boundaries protect your internal peace, like property.
Exactly. They define the perimeter of what is safe.
We need to move beyond just understanding what boundaries are to specific, actionable language. What examples do the sources provide for setting firm rules and scripts?
Effective boundaries have to be specific rules, not vague hopes. So, examples include deciding concrete contact rules like I won't discuss work issues after 6 p.m. or I won't debate heavy topics via text, clearly defining topics you absolutely won't engage with, and having established exit strategies for disrespectful exchanges.
So you're not forced to invent the language in the moment of stress. It should be pre-scripted.
Absolutely. The I statements are the short script you deploy when you need to enforce that boundary. They're concise and non-negotiable. They avoid justification.
Give me an example.
I'm not available to take on that task right now. Or, if the delivery is the issue, I won't be spoken to with that tone. I am stepping away from this conversation. These scripts bypass the need to justify your emotional needs, which is precisely where people who disregard boundaries seek to engage you.
And here is where it gets really interesting, connecting historical experience to current anxiety. The sources propose viewing anxiety not as a mystery, but as a map.
This is the therapeutic lens applied to external safety. If your personal history includes chronic bullying, gaslighting, or emotional chaos, your anxiety is not a mystery. It's a direct map. It's an internal alarm system pointing specifically to where threat and unsafety have historically occurred.
So if being heavily criticized was dangerous in the past, a mild critique now registers as a 9 out of 10 threat.
Precisely. The nervous system is trying desperately to prevent a recurrence of those specific threats. So healing, therefore, requires 2 non-negotiable steps. First, you have to remove yourself, as much as possible, from the pressure cooker environment that created the jumpiness.
And second,
You must begin the slow, painstaking work of rebuilding a sense of safety, evidence by evidence, day by day. The bodyguard needs thousands of successful, safe interactions to finally lower its default threat assessment. And boundary work is the tool for providing that safe evidence.
so what does this all mean for the listener's immediate next step? We need to provide that concrete, simple start plan that integrates these tools into a manageable daily rhythm.
Let's break this down into low-effort, high-impact routines,
Yeah.
focusing on 10 to 20 minutes of investment for maximum return. The plan starts in the morning, 10-20 minutes. The requirements are based on circadian synchronization and stability. Light movement, a stretch, a few yoga poses.
Yeah.
Getting sunlight exposure, even 5 minutes outside or near a window, which is critical for cortisol regulation. Drinking water, ensuring protein intake, and setting one clear intention for the day. This just primes the system for stability and agency.
The midday check-in is the critical pause that prevents stress from compounding.
It's the 2-minute reset. It's designed to interrupt the accumulation of stress before it becomes overwhelming. Midday, 2 minutes, requires the paced breathing, the 4-4-8 rhythm, a physical shoulder check to release tension, drinking water, and just standing up to break the physical and mental stagnation. It's a mini intervention.
And the evening routine cements the lessons of the day and prepares the system for restorative sleep.
The evening, 10-minute routine focuses on processing and preparation. Journaling the 3 lines: what happened, what I felt, what I need. Planning tomorrow's single first task to reduce morning decision fatigue. And the non-negotiable screen curfew. All screens down 60 minutes before bed.
This is a phenomenal daily rhythm, but the source also provides a structured weekly and monthly maintenance schedule to keep that baseline load from creeping up over the long term.
Right. The weekly 60-minute checkpoints are about deeper engagement and boundary practice. A longer movement session, scheduling one honest conversation to hit that connection target, and actively practicing boundary assertion by saying one no to something you genuinely don't want to do.
That final no is critical for reinforcing agency.
It is.
And the high-level strategic monthly review.
This is your strategic meeting with your bodyguard. Monthly, you must review your boundaries. Are they holding? Do they need adjustment? Actively cancel one draining commitment to reduce the overall load, and book one restoring thing to replenish your reserves. This schedule prevents that long-term stress creep that leads to burnout.
We must end this section with the crucial information: when to escalate. Sometimes the tools and maintenance and boundaries aren't sufficient, and external crisis support is necessary.
We need to be very clear about the critical signs that warrant urgent professional help. These include panic attacks that are persistent and don't resolve with these tools, any thoughts of self-harm, using substances to numb or manage daily life, or if anxiety is interfering with your core functioning work, sleep, parenting, for more than 2 weeks.
The message must be one of safety and normalization, removing any shame from the need for escalation.
Absolutely. The message is, you're not a burden. You're a person having a perfectly human response to too much. Escalation is not failure. It is smart, strategic self-advocacy. The advice is to reach out to a clinician, urgent care, or a crisis line in your area immediately if you hit any of those thresholds.
We've covered a remarkable amount of ground, moving from the microscopic biology of the threat response, through the chemical mechanics of our nervous system, and finally to the macroscopic strategies of environment and boundary setting.
The entire journey is synthesized in the source's final, powerful message, one that we hope really resonates with you, the listener, and helps you reframe your entire experience.
That message is, you're not broken. You're overloaded. There's a difference. That distinction between brokenness and merely having an overloaded, hypersensitive circuit is the entire mission of this deep dive.
It is. It means the problem is solvable through strategic inputs and maintenance, not through some impossible personal transformation.
And that leads directly back to the idea of practice.
You need to build your toolkit, the immediate and daily tools, and crucially, you must practice it when you are calm, so that those pathways are well-worn and ready when you are stressed and your rational brain is offline. The ultimate long-term goal, as the source states, is simple: to keep people around who talk to your nervous system like they love it, because they love you.
And for those inevitable days when the structure fails, when the load feels impossible and the alarms are blaring, there is the absolute baseline protocol you can always return to.
If all else fails today, you can't remember any of the tools. Just breathe, drink water, and step outside. Repeat, then repeat again tomorrow. It is the minimal viable effort that keeps the system online and resets the baseline.
What's fascinating here is how that anxiety as a map metaphor ties everything together. We discovered the bodyguard is pointing to historical threats. So how does that understanding change our responsibility moving forward?
Given that your nervous system is a vigilant, well-meaning bodyguard, how might understanding its specific history, the map of your past trauma and stress, fundamentally change the way you negotiate your future environment and relationships? The boundaries. If your bodyguard knows exactly where the old threats came from, you can proactively redesign your life and your calendar to provide concrete, undeniable evidence of safety day by day. That is the true power of this knowledge.